Hi guys, I thought I would make this video so that I can discuss, in some detail, like my thoughts on all the Marvel movies, roughly from 1998 to present day. Which ones did I enjoy, which ones I didn't like, which ones I haven't seen. A lot of Marvel superheroes I don't really care for. Now, that doesn't mean I hate them, they're horrible characters or whatnot, but there's like a specific amount of characters that I really enjoyed, really read in the comics. I consider myself kind of like a casual, hardcore Marvel comic fan, meaning I will read like the majority of things, but stuff like they made like 10 different other comics of Spider-Man. I'll skip them. Event series, I don't really read those. Again, because of the way they always handled them in Marvel Comics. One, they always overused them, and two, they interrupted the series whenever you were reading something in a story. They would never like pre-check on all the series or characters that were involved in the event. I'm like, oh, okay, we're going to like pause the main story and then do the event. A lot of times they would simply just interrupt the current comics event with a story that I don't really care about. And the other third reason is because it's just a marketing ploy for me to go buy, 10 or 12 other comic issues in order to understand the story. I'm the person who's like, yeah, I can skip a movie here or there. I don't have to own every single thing from a series of movies, comics, or TV shows. I don't have the fourth Harry Potter film because I think it's the worst film in the entire line. And we're going to start off with the Blade movies, which I actually haven't seen. The reason why that had happened was because they started in 1998 and I was 12. So I just, couldn't see them at the time because they were rated R. But I always wanted to see the Blade movies because a lot of people said they were great. Although some people said the third one is not good. I have no idea. I would have to watch all of them. I always wanted to get around to doing that, but for whatever reason, I haven't had a chance. Now, the X-Men series, starting from 2000, from the very first thing, I enjoyed the first two films very much. Are they perfect? No. I did hate things like when they jabbed about the costumes, like, yellow spandex. I've always hated that. It's like you could get those original comic book costumes to work. They're just missing, various details. You would mute them. But other than that, like the second film, I think was the best one. It gave more of the mystery to Wolverine's background and whatnot. But that was kind of the starting point where they were rushing through storylines and stuff, which brings me to X-Men 3 or The Last Stand. That was the last time I watched an X-Men movie because I always hated, they always want to do the Dark Phoenix saga, because yeah, it's one of those great comic book stories, and obviously if you were a fan of the 90s animated series, which is usually what introduced everyone to the comic universe, to Marvel, when it came to the third film, it was like, why did we go right to the Phoenix? There were so many stories that we could have adapted before that storyline, and even then, you could have had her, be the good one, then go to the bad one at some point. But it was just, they wasted the opportunity. It was in movie, which could have been done over several movies, but it was just like all this conglomerated nonsense. And then, Scott dies in the film and whatnot. And I really didn't like it. So after the third film, I never watched X-Men again. Even though you can argue there were several other X-Men movies that were, okay and good, but because I was so sullied by that third film, I just never gave them a chance. But it also didn't help that, things like X-Men Origins Wolverine was made, where they completely destroyed Deadpool, which I never understand when companies do those things where they alter characters in ways that you can clearly realize that they're not going to work or fans are going to hate them. And it's just Deadpool. He's just a jackass. He makes quips. He tries to kill targets because he's an assassin. He's crazy. He's insane. Whatever you want to do it. Next up would be Spider-Man films, the first three from Tobey Maguire. Now everyone always says the second Spider-Man film was the best one of the three, and I do agree on that. Does it have some issues? Yeah, very minor. I do enjoy the first one very much because again, it was finally, I wouldn't say it's a serious comic book movie because, again, X-Men came out, but it was one where they put in a lot of effort. And I really respected the director because he was a fan. Sam Raimi was a fan of Spider-Man. So he understood him. Yes, they changed things, which I didn't like. I'm the one who's like, the whole organic web shooters, I never understood that. It was just like, again, the whole process of where producers or writers are like, oh, this is stupid that he has all these powers from a mutated spider, but he can't shoot webbing. It makes no sense. Just give him the powers. It's just like, again, there are things that will naturally not make sense in a lot of areas if you stick scientifically, but don't change the source material because there's really no point. He could have just made the web shooters, and from the Andrew Garfield one, and of course the Tom Holland ones, he has the ones. Although I do give them points because it was fun seeing all three of them, interact to that weird issue from Tobey's movies where they're like, wait, you can shoot them from there. So at least they use the elements to make a good scene out of it. Next up would be Daredevil. Now, I've seen both the original cut and the director's cut. The director's cut of the film is better, but still, I didn't like the film at all. So much material. Yeah, the origin is relatively fine, but everything else that they put into the movie, it was so rushed. It was, and at the time when I saw it, I didn't know anything about Daredevil. Now, granted, till this day, I'm not a real big fan of Daredevil, super, know everything about the character or not. I read his comics here and there, but the original film, it just was not good. Again, it just felt very rushed. I thought it was a bad idea that they brought in Elektra in the first film. Now, if they had made a second one and then they put her in, fine. But they were like, oh, everyone really liked what's-her-face from Alias. Yeah, she's a good actor, she's a good fighter. But I think it was just, the movie was so overloaded with stuff that it just could not portray Daredevil the proper way. And, compared to the TV series that came out on Netflix, night and day. 1,000% better pacing, the way they used the characters, perfect casting on everyone. You can't go wrong with Charlie Cox, so they redeemed the Daredevil comic with the TV series. Next one up would be the bane of my existence, the very first 2003 Hulk movie. Now, everyone can criticize it from the really poor CG, but for me, it was just like the director and the writers just did not care about the source material. They just, made Hulk do whatever he wanted. Now, I will give it some pointers. It's the closest we ever got to the proper origin story. Yes, there's still some changes, like Rick is still not in the films. Other than that, everyone always says, the desert scene was the coolest part in the movie, and I do agree on that. But I only saw the film one time, and that was it. I was really disappointed to it. Hulk didn't look great. In general, I have a specific thing I like how Hulk is portrayed. I always prefer Hulk to visually look like Bruce Banner. I never liked it when artists would be like, oh yeah, well, let's make Hulk in this era look like Jack Kirby, and it'll be a fun in-joke and whatnot. They made him a very odd green color, and it's not even like the critique of the CG, because again, it's 2003, that's all they could have done at the time. Hulk got bigger because he got angrier. It's just like, oh, you really just wanted to make a monster movie, but don't change, an established comic book character. Very disappointed. And, at least when it came to the 2008 film, it was something better. Now, The Punisher. Again, another comic series that I really have no interest in to it. It was just not my cup of tea, so I never saw the film. Spider-Man 2. Again, like I said, everyone loved the film. It's nearly flawless. It hits all the core and classic elements from Spider-Man. And it had, I think the best pacing of the three films because it brought in, Peter Parker was doubting himself that he could be a superhero. Again, at a certain point, every hero in a comic book will doubt themselves whether they completely royally screwed up and got someone killed or they were so overwhelmed with a situation that it broke them down. So I do appreciate when Sam Raimi did those classic moments of Parker throwing his suit out in the garbage. It's like I love when comic book movies reference elements here and there from the comic, or they can do an exact frame of a comic panel into it. I do appreciate that. But when they overzealously do it in order to like either compromise a story beat or rush to a major story point, that's when I hate it. Elektra. Because I was so disappointed with Daredevil, I did not watch this film. The very first Fantastic Four movie. Now, I'm definitely the minority. I did enjoy this movie. Now, I did like it, the extended version. That was the version I actually saw, not the theatrical release. Now, is the movie perfect? No. No. I always hated Chris Evans as Johnny. Yeah, Johnny has a very specific dick quality to him. He has to be that ass toward Thing and whatnot. They have that argument. He just couldn't do it right. And originally, I was like, because of the way he portrayed Johnny in that movie, I didn't want to see him as Captain America. But luckily, he's a good actor, and he was a great Captain America, so props to him. But I did like the first movie to a degree. There were certain things that I didn't like because, the family aspect of the Fantastic Four was there, but like things were missing. Like Herbie was not in the film. Blink and you miss moment in that storage place. Some jokes did not land right. Another problem is also Thing. Thing is a very hard character to do because even in the comics, it's always the same problem. Like, oh, everyone fears him. Because he's this giant orange rock guy. But when I read the comics, and when I was young, I never hated Thing. Thing was always the cool looking dude. Because of I always liked Thing's appearance. I thought he was cool because again, he's a hero. You want to aspire to be him because he always saved the day. He always dealt with all the crap and junk that everyone threw at him. They're constantly getting sued 1 billion times. So they have to deal with a lot of mundane things in life, which again, granted, will be very hard to do. There's a balance between being cool and super heroic versus the mundane stuff. Now the story, I really didn't like that they changed Doom. Again, I don't like it whenever they change origin stories, period. The writer cannot come up with anything better than what the source material did. And also they introduce a lot of problems into the story because they changed the origin. Without Rick Jones, they had that love relationship with Hulk and Black Widow. Made no sense. It basically screwed Betty. It simply would have been a story with Rick, using Rick instead of Black Widow, but we don't have it. So again, things make no sense. So I never really liked that. Next up would be Ghost Rider. That's a comic series that I never was interested in. Do I hate him? No. Johnny Blaze, don't really hate him. I enjoyed Spawn. And then we had Ghost Rider, which was very similar to Spawn, but I saw Spawn first. So I was like, well, I have it in Spawn. I don't really care about Ghost Rider. I saw some of it, didn't really like it. I don't know the character, so I don't know if it followed the source material correctly. What I saw, I was like, no, this is not good. And I was surprised they go and make The Spirit of Vengeance, the sequel, and I was like, where did this come from? They made enough money on the first one where they did a sequel? And I was not interested, and I never bothered with it. And obviously it bombed, and no one really cared. Next would be Spider-Man 3. And I was so disappointed in this film. Now, I get it. Everyone wants to see Venom. Everyone wants to see the black suit Spider-Man. And we had really great animated series that delved into that story arc from the 90s one to the Spectacular Spider-Man. I always consider those the best two of the animated series. Now, when it came to Spider-Man 3, if each of the villains were their own movies, I would have been okay. If it was solely about Venom, solely about Sandman, Harry turning into the Green Goblin, you can make those movies, but putting them all together completely ruined every single one of the characters. I've only seen this movie once. And I don't think I ever saw the actual ending of the film because I was so pissed off that everything was rushed, things were altered, characters made no sense. Harry destroyed Harry in the process, which again got repeated in Amazing Spider-Man 2. I mean, I really didn't like it in the first Spider-Man movie where they killed off Norman. Like in the first film, I was like, I never liked that in Marvel movies. So much that when they relaunched the Spider-Man series with Andrew Garfield, I didn't originally watch the first film. That was because of various reasons I'll get into later. But let's first talk about the sequel, Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. When I saw the trailer for the very first time, I was really annoyed at Chris Evans playing Johnny. Again, I think they went overboard. Or it's just, I don't usually like blaming the actor, and I usually blame it on the writer who couldn't just not get that to work. Because again, comedy and action drama are very difficult to balance. And then the ultimate kicker was, Galactus was a cloud. That was it. We did not see Galactus at all. We saw Silver Surfer, which was cool. But again, without doing Galactus properly, I was like, no, I'm skipping it just because of that in general. It's like, if you just don't do a character proper, I usually will just not attempt to watch it at all. I was like, why are they doing this whole power swapping nonsense? That was the end of the Fantastic Four, unfortunately, all these years until that godforsaken one that they made. They couldn't even say the stupid name in it. But let's go on to Iron Man. And I really enjoyed this film. I think everyone has enjoyed this film. This was the strongest film of the first two ones they launched with, alongside Incredible Hulk. And I'm glad they did not pull that whole thing where they wanted to link Incredible Hulk with Iron Man. I was like, no, do not do that. I've always hated the whole convenience aspect of like superheroes or their villains. Like whether, I was friends with, Bruce Banner when he was 10 years old or whatnot. And same thing in the She-Hulk TV series. I was like, you went from a character who had a life. Doctor Doom took that hatred and anger that she, had in her and we're like, you'd be great as my pawn. Transform Titania into this, powerful enemy, an interesting character, and then you turned her into, she was, the girl that, that Jen hated in high school. I was like, are you kidding me? Iron Man was amazing. It hit all the core elements of the origin story. It kind of rushed here and there, but I really liked how they handled Obadiah Stane. Is it accurate 100%? No, I kind of didn't like it when Tony revealed that I am Iron Man versus the whole bodyguard thing. I would have preferred he kept it. I understand why they did it. I still didn't like it. But again, because the rest of the film was great, and, I can forgive that. Now, the 2008 Hulk movie, again, compared to the 2003 one, 100% better. The CGI was better. It was still wonky, but compared to what they did before, better. Proper colors, overall balanced, and got true to the character. For the most part, again, they changed the origin story drastically, which opened them up to, a billion plot holes, which I mentioned in my review of the film. I liked all the actors. I think they just crammed in too much. I didn't like that they were bringing in Leader, and I was like, you could have cut out Leader and put in Rick. Rick is a core character to Hulk. You cannot do it. Whenever you do it, it just feels wrong. It feels like something's missing. Work with, to go back and forth, regardless of, him being, uncontrollable and has very low intelligence. He still wants to do the right thing. He still wants to protect people, and he's just a tormented soul. So they did capture that element very well, and I do miss it from the modern, version of Hulk. Now he's just a goofy idiot half the time, and I really want the 2008 movie back. For what its flaws, I want it back. Punisher Warzone, again, just like the first one, no interest, didn't care, skipped it over. X-Men Origins Wolverine, oh God, that was what completely killed it. Yeah, I was like, I'm never going to watch Last Stand, any X-Men because of Last Stand, but because Origin was so bad. Because Wolverine is one of my favorite characters. I would have watched the Wolverine movie. Oh yeah, they screwed up X-Men. We're just gonna go with Logan, and it's kind of a flashback and whatnot. So we're gonna see his, background, and we're gonna get that stuff. And then it was just like this nonsense. Yeah, I remember the entire movie got leaked online, and it was just, with complete, incomplete visual effects, which I saw it out of curiosity because I love seeing movies without the visual effects complete, but even then, I didn't see the entire thing. I only saw snippets here and there, and the thing that turned me off was, the destruction of Deadpool. Again, for no reason whatsoever. It was just like, F you fans, we're going to just do whatever the hell we want with this character. We're not going to let him talk. And I was like, okay, so you're not going to get my money, and I'm never going to watch an X-Men movie again, whether they're good or not. Iron Man 2. It's again, this movie's 50-50 with me. Yeah, there's a lot of aspects I liked of it, but I didn't really care about the whole villain whiplash that combined various characters here and there. If you have to add in new characters, fine, cool. I'd never have an objection of adding a character as long as they're important to the story. They're not like, chess piece that's in the corner, like, oh, I'll use one time, and it just ends up being for a plot device. No, it's like, yeah, add a new character. Give them something that, like, okay, the film needs this character because either exposition, let's, use this character to help out people who are unfamiliar with the comics. And I think also this is this turning point where, like, everyone was like, oh, people really are loving the comedy aspect of the character, and we're going to do more. And that was the trap where Marvel started doing the whole, let's just keep putting in more jokes. And now it's devolved into insane nonsense that's just now it just breaks things because they just don't care that, oh, this violates what they said in the previous movie, or this violates something they did in this TV series or whatnot. They could have gone with a different villain overall, because there's a lot of villains you can pick from Iron Man. I think, and also another thing, I kind of hated that they had replaced now War Machine. Believe it or not, I really like War Machine more than Tony. I don't know. Rhodey I thought was always cooler than Tony because, you got the usual, this stuck-up jerk, just like Rhodey, because he's that regular dude. It's like Winston in Ghostbusters. He's my favorite character out of all of them because he was just a regular dude. I need a paycheck. I will take anything. I wish War Machine got a movie. I was really upset that War Machine has no movie to himself because I did like the first actor who played War Machine. Don't get me wrong, I like the current actor too, because both actors are great. I think it was kind of that point where it was just like, all these little problems here and there. So it's just like Iron Man, it wasn't as great as the first one. Thor. Now, I don't really care about this character. I never cared about the Asgards. Do I hate them? No. I'm just not interested. I prefer the more Greek mythology. So, Hercules, Ares, things like that. And particularly one that I was like, no, I'm not going to watch them at all because, again, which we'll get to later, X-Men First Class. Again, like I said, after Origins, I said, nope. I am not going to watch any more X-Men films, whether people liked it or not. I know people do say they were decent films. Captain America: The First Avenger. I did not watch this film either because, again, I really am not interested in Captain America. Half the Avengers, the original Avengers core team, I don't really care about. It's just they're not my characters in Captain America. I saw the original 90s film. That was the only time I ever saw the character. I never really read his comics. I enjoy him for who he is whenever he interacts with the characters I do like. Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance, like I said before, nope. But the first time I did see Thor and Captain America was in the very first Avengers movie. I mean, in general, I was kind of annoyed. I was like, this is not the original Avengers. I was really annoyed that they skipped over Ant-Man. Now, The Amazing Spider-Man, the first film with Andrew Garfield. I didn't see this movie originally for many, many, many years. In fact, the first time I actually saw the first film was in preparation of reviewing the second film for one of my videos. I said, you know what, I got to do this properly. I'm going to go and actually watch the first one. The reason why I skipped it was because they were going to be like, oh, it's a reboot and whatnot. And I've always hated that argument and logic. We have to reboot the series because we recasted an actor. And I was like, I don't really see a point. Yeah, okay, actors come and go. Franchises go on for many, many years. Me personally, I would have just replaced, Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, and whatnot, and still, have those characters be used until they covered, a lot of the comic book stories. Because again, I want, virtually every major comic book to be adapted into a live action thing. Why not? If you adapt everything, you'll have all the bases. Amazing Spider-Man had rebooted and they retold the story again. Yes, it had new stuff. I know the whole lizard thing was in it, but because I was annoyed at 3, and then they were like, oh, we're going to reboot it, we're going to retell the origin story again. I was like, no. Repeat of origin story, and reboot for no real reason. We could have just called it Spider-Man 4, had a new actor, and just continued on with different villains and whatnot. Iron Man 3, I saw this once. I was extremely disappointed with it for the obvious reasons. Again, a lot of the dumb things that Tony did in that film. We have the Wolverine, again, skipped it. Skipped X-Men, didn't care. Thor Dark World. Now, I heard everyone's hated this second movie of Thor because it was bizarre or weird or it had some dumb plot. I don't know. Captain America, The Winter Soldier. I hear everyone always says this is a great film, but again, I don't care about Captain America. I don't really care about Bucky. The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Everyone knows my thoughts on this film. It was atrocious for so many reasons. Harry, conveniently, having the same disease his father has, but just simply was dying in a week. Oh, it just magically just started when my father started. So I get the motivation to hate, Spider-Man because he's the only one who can cure me. The whole mystery with Parker's mother and father. Look, in general, I didn't like this. I didn't really care about this story point. It's in the comics and whatnot. It's some mysteries or background elements of characters you don't have to answer. And Spider-Man parents didn't really have to do it. And I think it was also because the Iron Man Armored Adventures CG cartoon show, they kind of ripped off that element of it. I was like, oh no, I already saw this in there. And I'm like, do I have to see it again? And I was like, okay, whatever. What was the worst thing was Electro. Because he was so altered from the source material, I was disappointed in that. And then they turned him into a joke. I was like, really? You're going to be in this power plant, which is complete BS. I was like, no power plant looks like this. Then you stuck in the stupid spider song. And I was like, what is this movie supposed to be? And then they're so busy trying to set up the whole Sinister Six in the background. We are on our second film, and you decided to kill Gwen Stacy. I was like, no. I want to see these characters for years. They were like, oh, we're going to make the fans so happy with the whole referencing the comic issue. There's a time and place to do references like that. If you want to reference it somewhere, reference it somewhere. But it can't be the focal point. The focal point has to be her death and the hell that Parker went through when that occurred. Because it was a very big, important minute for the Spider-Man comic. And unfortunately, over the years, it's become now pointless because, again, everyone doesn't die in the Marvel or even DC comics. Death is meaningless. We had so many characters that have died and been revived for various reasons. It's just like, at this point, I don't want to see anyone die again. Everyone's like, oh no, we got to bring back, we killed MJ, or we have this weird plot line where we're going to kill her, and then 6 months later, oh no, she's back, she's fine. X-Men's Days of Future Past. Now, I know the whole plot about this film. This film was basically there to fix what they did in X3 and erased it from existence. Great and all, but Last Stand still exists. It happened. Just because you made a movie that retcons it or erases it doesn't change the fact that it occurred. So again, I skipped the movie and I've never seen it. Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, I didn't know anything about... Well, that's not true. I knew bits and pieces of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Did I ever read a comic of them? No. So the very first time I saw them was in the movie. Now, I know from doing research and about the characters now, they are different in the movies. I didn't really care when I found out what was different, how the characters were in the thing. I kind of hated that they changed them. I would have liked more of the comic book version of it. I get why they did it. It would have been nice, though, if they can kind of reblend them back into the source material. Did I hate the movie? No. I thought the movie was fine. It hit all the beats. I did like Peter Quill and all the other characters, although I always never really liked Groot because all he does is say, I am Groot. I get that's the joke. It's just something I never really cared for. I preferred the Guardians in the animated series versions of them, like in Hulk Agents of Smash or Earth Mightiest Heroes, whatever animated series. Avengers Age of Ultron. A lot of people hate this film. And was it, the great film in the world? No. It was not a good film. It had a lot of weird issues. I was like, Ultron already? There could have been other villains you could have brought in. To me, I really would have preferred if Ultron was Ant-Man and then Avengers did something more. Because I always think, here's the funny thing. I thought like Doctor Strange 2's movie should have been an Avengers movie, but because of all what they did, they couldn't do it. But to me, that was a worthy thing of being an Avengers movie. Ant-Man, the very first Ant-Man movie. I did see it. I did enjoy it, but I didn't enjoy it as I would have liked. First problem was, again, they went with the second Ant-Man, Scott Lang, versus Hank Pym. I thought that was completely stupid. Like, it was simply there because they were like, oh, we had to explain why the Avengers in the MCU does not have Ant-Man compared to the comic. In general, I don't like second characters who use names. I've never liked that in general, especially when there's like literally no difference in, the character's name. There's like 8 different Robins. I don't care about any of the other Robins. I only care about Dick Grayson Robin. When Dick, retired being Robin and became Nightwing, the character should have been retired unless Dick went back to that character for whatever reason. Whenever they replace someone with a different character, I think it's extremely lazy, or it's just their way of dealing with a copyright issue and they need to use another character for the time being. Or third, they had destroyed the original character in some way. Bad writer, bad storyline, and they couldn't recover, so we're going to temporarily turn off that character, we'll make a new one in replacement. And I'm like, I ain't reading a replacement character or a clone copy. So I did like it. I do like the actor who plays Ant-Man. He's a great actor, but I wish he was playing Hank Pym more, the science nerdy dude, because I don't know, I like science nerdy dudes, and most of the time that those characters seem to never get done. Fantastic Four Stick or Fan Four Stick, whatever, that horrible reboot of Fantastic Four. If you wanted to give an example of how to screw up a movie, I will definitely point to this one. It's the most, affected, altered, abused, mishandled version of a comic book. It's like if you wanted to make, like, say, you wanted to make, a Pokemon movie, and you just, had all the characters shoot each other with guns. That's the equivalent of what they did. All of the, fun, lightheartedness is gone. It's a gritty thing. It has plot holes up the ass. Just with that origin story where Reed, because I didn't see the movie, like I saw it in bits and pieces. I didn't see the movie all the way through, but I just remember when Reed was making his science project and the teachers did not give a shit. Like literally, this guy is opening portals and doing scientific miracles in the lunchroom of some school, and they're like treating it as like this is like he was handing him a lollipop. What is this crap? I cannot stand when movies throw out, logic, consistency, or basic things in their plot lines for the sake of whatever thing they're telling. It's like, if you want to cover this element of a character or storyline, you gotta make it fit in with their personalities, the direction you're going. You have to care. Captain America Civil War, I thought this should have been an Avenger movie. I always found it odd that they made this a Captain America movie. I never saw it, even though it was the whole big thing about, oh my God, Spider-Man, the Tom Holland Spider-Man was going to be put in the MCU. It was the first time Sony and Disney cooperated with the thing. And I was like, thanks. And like, why couldn't you do that with Universal and Hulk so we could have had additional Hulk films where we could have used the character more and did him properly? And it's like, oh, no. So maybe I had some resentment because of that. I didn't really care for the Civil War comic line in general because it kind of never made sense. Because the whole purpose of it was like, should superheroes be vigilantes or should superheroes be police officers, basically? Depending on character, they sided on one way or the other. And I was like, well, if they're gonna be public servants, then you pay them. And you have to deal with all the various things, and you can't have them, be slandered like with J. Jonah Jameson. It's just like all these various aspects would have to be dealt with before that would be believable. And at the end of the day, it would never work out because multiple people, whether they want to be heroes or not, because there's many people in the Marvel universe where they have powers where they will outright be like, I ain't doing hero work. F that. I have these powers for myself. I'm not doing anything to anyone. There would probably be no system to make it 100% fair. Because, think of Hulk. Look at what the crap that he goes through. And I'm like, you really think anyone's gonna treat him right? What the hell happened in the Planet Hulk story? Because he rampaged, is Hulk, nice and perfect? No. There are times where he goes insane and he causes extreme amounts of damage, but it's usually linked to some sort of issue. Bruce's mind or a villain has tricked him. They threw him off the planet. So, like, if you're not going to trust Hulk like that, why the hell would I want to trust the whole nonsense with Civil War? So I don't know. I didn't like the comic in general because at the end of the day, it didn't really go anywhere. Like, everyone just basically reset and it went back to status quo. X-Men Apocalypse, but again, X-Men didn't care. Doctor Strange. Now again, I don't hate this character. I just don't really have any interest into it. Even though Benedict Cumberbatch is playing the character, I don't know. Magic in general in the Marvel universe, I've never really cared for it because it brings in so many logistics issues, plot holes. Doctor Strange just constantly shows them. Like, in one minute they'll use the portals, the next minute they won't use the portals, break everything. So I never really cared about the character. Wong I thought was fun. I always enjoy seeing Wong whenever he pops up in different films and whatnot. And when Doctor Strange appears in the other films, fine, whatever, he's there. Logan movie. Everyone always says this was the greatest movie of all time. It was the best interpretation of Wolverine. Patrick Stewart came back as Professor X and dealing with him. Was he dying? I didn't see the movie again. If I ever went back to the X-Men films, this would be the movie I would watch above all because there's so many people have praised it. If I ever do, I say I will at some point. I will eventually watch the Logan film. Guardians of the Galaxy, I just had no chance of watching it right now. I like the first one. I would like to see the second one. Spider-Man Homecoming. This is the movie I actually didn't see of the Spider-Mans. I didn't bother seeing it because, again, we got a new actor. I was very disappointed with Amazing 2. Yeah, nothing was repeated. We didn't get the origin story. But then they were like, we're going to put in Iron Man. So we're going to have Spider-Boy and him looking up to Iron Man. I really didn't like that. I get why they did it because they did not want to do the origin story, but we wanted to have a teenage Spider-Man. You kind of need something to replace that in there. Why not use Iron Man? Because he's like the most popular MCU character of the time. Spider-Man wasn't really being Spider-Man. I said, I'll skip over it. Thor Ragnarok. This was the movie that I was like, I will not watch a Thor movie, period. They brought in Hulk. The thing that I hated the most was that they took basically Hulk from Planet Hulk and just threw it in the movie. And because I know that rumor that in the She-Hulk show, they're going to talk about Scar. And I'm like, so all the Planet Hulk stuff happened, but we didn't see it. I was like, thank you for not seeing this big moment that, is the precursor to World War Hulk, where Hulk went absolutely insane, basically turning into, Maestro. And I was like, yeah, it's like, thanks, Thor Ragnarok. And on top of it, funny and crazy and stupid. And I was like, do not put Hulk in a movie like that. Because they wasted him there, I was like, no. Black Panther. Again, cool character, but I'm not really interested in the character at all. Again, like a lot of times when you do these kind of things, it feels samey. Runs this, Dome City, reminds me of the Inhumans. I like that story there, technology, Wakanda, cool movie, whatever. It's just not my thing, so I skipped over that film. Avengers Infinity War. I actually saw this movie out of sequence. I saw Endgame first before Infinity War. Don't ask me why I did it. For whatever reason, I just did not watch Infinity War, even though it was like the oh my god moment where Thanos snapped his fingers and everyone got erased. Well, not everyone. 50% of everything in the universe got erased. I think I was in the Marvel slump because there was so much Marvel, so many things. And remember, like I've said, I skip more movies than actually watch them. So I just went over it and I didn't really care. So I didn't see it until later on. I mean, I regretted it because I was like, oh. I didn't care that I was missing context from Endgame. Again, I read a lot of the comics, so regardless, I understand the basic gist of various things, even if they alter them. I can get what they're going to, so I don't mind watching movies out of order. but I regretted it in this case. And Infinity War was a good film. Here and there were some issues that I didn't care for, but overall, it was a good film. I almost forgot about Deadpool 1 and Deadpool 2 because, again, he shares the franchise of X-Men. I ended up skipping Deadpool. I think another reason why I didn't really care to watch the live-action Deadpool, yeah, of course he breaks the fourth wall. Yes, he's funny. Yes, he's a complete dick, and he's a crazy person. I think they kind of overdo it in the movies. It would have been, I wish they were a little bit more closer to the comic source material. They're not that deviated, but there is a difference enough where it's just like, I'm not interested in the character. If I wanted a fourth wall breaking character that's fun, I have Shulky. Who cares? Ant-Man and the Wasp, like I said, I thought the first movie was okay, but I was like, I'm not into it because at the end of the day, I want Hank Pym, I want Janet. Okay? I don't want their replacement, so I didn't bother watching Ant-Man and the Wasp. Venom, I didn't watch it because at the end of the day, yeah, Venom's an interesting character, and yes, Venom does get solo comics, but I never cared about him as an anti-hero. Sometimes at the end of the day, I prefer villains to stay villains rather than become an anti-hero. The main problem is it's just Venom, has no Spider-Man. I would have been more accepting of a Venom movie if they had already done Spider-Man with him. You need that origin story, you need that background, you need Tom Holland, you need that. And I was just not interested in Venom 1. Captain Marvel, that movie, again, I didn't care about the character. I used to care about Captain Marvel in the past when she was Miss Marvel, but the character has gotten worse over the years. Weird, arrogant, killed Tony. It's like, why would I like a character who's done that? No Miss Marvel section of her character at all. So you didn't get a proper origin story. Any bits of the origin story were altered and changed. Any element of the character I liked was just not there. So I was like, I was not interested in the film. It was just a mismatch of whatever. Avengers Endgame, for the most part, it's a good film, but it has a lot of problems. And the biggest issue is the time travel element of it. What makes it also lower in score now is because of things like Loki, the TV series Loki. They basically said, oh no, the Infinity Gems and whatnot are immaterial, and you have this whole time travel police thing. You have what's his face, Kang in the background running things. So it just feels like they ruined Endgame because of all those things that are set up for future things. And I was just like, it feels pointless. It felt like a waste of time. It's like if they don't have any will until after Loki defeated the dude and had all this other nonsense going around, and the TAV can steal the gems while in Endgame they're like, oh no, we have to put it back in the universe or that universe explodes or some. If they had not done it with time travel, it would have been, there was really no good way to really live up to Infinity War's cliffhanger. So Endgame was always going to be in a rock and a hard place. For a lot of sequence. When it comes to story, if you were just there for action and you didn't care about story, of course you were going to be happy about it. Dark Phoenix. No. First we had, X3, and they're like, let's do it again, but 100 times worse. Jean Grey can't get a break. You can't have, do this story right. And I felt sorry for what's-her-face who played Jean in the movies. The woman from Game of Thrones. I was like, no, that was so disappointing. Spider-Man Far From Home, the second of the current trilogy of his films. I didn't see the movie. Yeah, I kind of lost context when I watched No Way Home. Again, I was at that point of burnout where I was like, I don't really care about Marvel movies that much. So again, I skipped over Spider-Man, and I was like, yeah, I kind of like, oh, they did Mysterio. They hadn't done that yet. And I was like, cool, this. And they had the cliffhanger and the fake Nick Fury and whatnot and the trick where they... But I think also when I watched No Way Home, I was like, wait a minute. Why did Parker fall for some stupid thing like that? Literally, the guy was like, I know the secret identity of Spider-Man is Peter Parker. And I'm like, he didn't show him footage. And then Parker would have been like, I ain't answering that, and just swing the away. That's all he had to do. But it was just like, how convenient. Parker had to be stupid and pull off his mask. Why would you ever pull off your mask while you were in public? Unless it's some sort of insane fiasco where, again, the villain pulled it off, it was blown off, things like you cannot control. It just made him look extremely stupid. I was like, but he's a teenager. He's supposed to be stupid. If he was that stupid to pull off his mask, he would have done it multiple times just by doing it by out of habit or just not thinking about it. Next up, The New Mutants. No, nope, no one cared about this film. This should not have been made. But again, one of the last movies that Fox was producing. So after the Disney acquisition of Fox, they were just going to release it anyway, and it crashed and burned, and it was a waste of talents, waste of money, and they shouldn't have done it. The Black Widow movie. I didn't bother seeing this for a couple of reasons. One, I thought it was insulting, honestly, to release a Black Widow film after the character died. Do I read her comic? No. I don't really care about the character, but that's, again, assassins I don't go for assassin type characters. And I also heard there was tons of plot holes and things that made no sense, and they omitted characters because of whatever reasons, and I was like, okay, there's no point. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Again, not interested in this character. And I know the rings are for the Mandarin, but I was like, again, they screwed up that entire plot line in Iron Man 3. Why was I going to really watch, Shang-Chi for this story? If I'm going to watch the Mandarin story, I want to have the Mandarin, not Shang-Chi. I don't really know anything about the character. Also, they had pulled the whole, we're going to stick Abomination in there. It's like, oh, yay, thank you, Marvel, again. We're using, characters from Hulk, but you're not giving him a movie. So again, because of that, that was the main objection I had of the movie, is because you're just, using Abomination as a toy for me to go watch the movie. And I was like, no, I'm not watching a movie. You want me to watch your movie? Make a Hulk movie that uses Abomination properly. Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Again, skipped it. Eternals. Never read their comics. I have no idea who they are. I know they changed a lot of the characters and whatnot, but I was like, I'm not interested in this type of story. Even though it was a personal story for Jack Kirby and whatnot, I never really cared about his huge worlds that he built, like the New Gods on DC side. I like two characters from the New Gods, Mr. Miracle and Big Barda. I like them, but I don't like reading the New Gods in general. So I only like specific characters. But the Eternals I never even heard about, so I don't know any of them, and their trailer was extremely boring. And I was like, no. Spider-Man No Way Home. Of course I couldn't skip this film, because yes, there's problems in it. There are plot issues and stuff. I hated how they made Doctor Strange stupid. And me personally, if I wanted to fix No Way Home to make it perfect or close to perfect, all I would have changed was one thing. The whole reason why everything got screwed up was because Doctor Strange didn't tell Parker that the spell erased everyone's memory of him, and he didn't want to do that. All they had to do was simply make it so that he did alert him about this change, and Parker wanted the specific characters to keep his memory, and he'd be like, okay, fine, we'll do that. But what would have screwed up the spell, again, I don't know Doctor Strange's background that well, I don't really know his villains, but I wouldn't have taken the villain from the first film. I would have taken one of his smaller villains that, that could have been, talked about in the background, or Wong, at least gave some exposition about, hey, we're dealing with, because how they had the exposition of the snow was in there for no real reason, and I was like, oh, that's cool. I thought that was leading to something, and it really didn't matter to the plot except for a small bit in the film later. But for the most part, it was really useless, and they could have used that as a setup to where, because Spider-Man was going into Doctor Strange, this villain of Doctor Strange was outside, and he was waiting for a moment where Doctor Strange was distracted enough, or the magic was, he was so fixated on doing this spell, he breaks in and completely disrupts the spell, which sets off everything. Morbius. I don't really think, we have to say anything to Morbius at all. Again, just like Venom, if you do not set it up properly, I will just skip it entirely, because it's just not worth it. If it's not worth doing, it's not worth watching. So Morbius, skipped over, and unfortunately, it was, a bad film on top of it. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. I didn't watch the first one, didn't really have any interest in it, but then a lot of people have also talked about how it has a lot of plot problems, and the obvious problem that it had was the whole, the multiverse has all these rules, and it's breaking down every time you pass through the portals, and there was only one character that could do it. What was her name? American Chavez. She was the only one who could stably do it. And I was like, well, so then what happened in No Way Home? They were breaking down the multiverse because the villains and heroes from Spider-Man's sides of his universe were breaking down the barriers. So then why didn't all these, issues of incursions and other crap trigger right after that film? It made no sense. Of all things, why did they want to, continue WandaVision's story in a Doctor Strange film? It felt so arbitrary, and that's why I always said it should have been an Avengers movie. It really should, because the scale that they were trying to do, it felt like they would have definitely needed the Avengers to deal with her, because she became a villain. And I get that. She was a villain in the comics, and she always, went back and forth being a villain or not being a villain. It was, it is a part of her character. Like, I don't have a problem with her becoming a villain, but you can't excuse, things from the TV show, characterization, and also the illogical nature of it. After a while, it's just like, just make your kids and then that's it and move on. It just didn't make any... Describe the limits of her power. What can or cannot she do? It really didn't make any sense. This is the main problem I have with all magic characters in general. And the last current Marvel film that came out was Thor: Love and Thunder. Again, don't really care about Thor. I was really pissed off at Ragnarok, so I was not interested in, this movie at all. And then, of course, it was filled with tons and tons of funny humor. It's just like, what Marvel movie doesn't have humor? It's like, now it's all laughing stock and haha this and that and that. And then I also, read the synopsis, and I was like, wait a minute. Thor can grant people his power? Why did you do that? Because then he could always do that. Because why didn't he do it in Endgame? Why didn't he do it in any of his other movies? Why didn't he do it in Ragnarok? Like, why didn't he give granting Thor power to freaking Hulk? That would have probably done a ton of crap for Hulk to deal with Hela, for example. I mean, it brings up a lot of issues. So, like, that's the thing that I'm really disappointed now in the MCU. You have, all these movies, 25 films, I think. You have to think about how everything works. I mean, you don't have to be, a complete expert in all the films yourself as a writer, but you would definitely be like, okay, there's got to be, I want to, ask someone who knows this movie, that movie, this movie, that movie, who knows all the, like one person knows each, like one of the films perfectly. So then I would be like, I want to do this in my story. Does this conflict in any which way of this movie, that movie? And then they just pull it together and be like, this doesn't work because this breaks this that happened in this movie. This character had said this. So then I would be, okay, we got to rewrite this section of the film. That's how they really should treat it, but they don't really anymore. The writers do whatever they want. They don't really consider another movie. They'll break even their own consistency from the previous movie they're in. Like Thor, didn't they say, I think people had said in the first Thor movie that, oh, we're not gods. They're just, technologically advanced, so they look like gods. And then in the later films, they just call themselves gods. So that's obviously a mistake. It's just like, this is the one reason why I'm like, stick to the source material, stick to the comics. If you stick to one thing, then you don't have to worry about you being wrong. Now, okay, granted, the comics break a lot of themselves too. There's always a miscongruity with writers and comic books. It happens all the time. A perfect example is She-Hulk. When John Byrne left her comic, the writers that came in did not properly understand how the Hulk powers work, or how Jen has her powers work. It's different to how Hulk is. A lot of times they'll just transpose what they know about Hulk onto Shulky. That's completely wrong and not the way you're supposed to use her powers, and then the character's not done right. If it has happened in the comics, that should be, a major thing that any producer on the Marvel movies should be like, we shouldn't do that. We should always be like, we got to double check or triple check what we're setting up in a TV show or a movie, and they're just not really doing it anymore. I mean, were they perfect in the beginning? No, but for the most part, everything was linked. It didn't become a major issue until recently, where now they're just like, whatever here, whatever there. When you start treating your universe as whatever, you can do whatever you want whenever you feel like it. Like Doctor Strange can summon portals, but then for whatever reason he doesn't do it in this particular circumstance because it would just ruin the script. If you don't care to figure out a way to deal with a plot issue like that, and you're just like, no, the audience doesn't care. I don't care about your film. It gives me less reason for you for me to watch the film. If you don't want to put the work in, I'm not going to put the work in to watch your film. That's always been my rule of thumb. Don't treat your audience as, stupid. Yeah, at the end of the day, you just want to have fun and watch a movie, but I want the movie to make sense because many people out there like movies for so many different reasons. There's a lot of people out there who don't give a crap if things make no sense. To a degree, everyone always says, I don't give a crap if the story makes no sense. You do. If they cross a specific line, you will eventually be like, no, this movie's garbage because they just did whatever. Like if, say, there was a movie where there was a guy who had a 9mm gun in the scene and all of a sudden he got an RPG out of nowhere, you would definitely complain about that. But that's the extreme example. When I see a writer go out of their way to be like, oh, okay, this character, has these abilities, can only do this, can only do that, and whatnot, I respect them much more because they're considering, oh, okay, think of Nightcrawler. This guy can teleport anywhere, but he has limitations. Imagine if Nightcrawler didn't have to look at where he's going to teleport, or if he's been to that location before. He would break so many comic book issues, movies, anything. You could not use him. He's a walking plot hole. Think of your characters, think of your universe, give them limitations, and a lot of times the limitations will even pay off in other ways. So yeah, I don't really watch every single Marvel movie out there, just like how I don't read every single Marvel comic book. I don't really have a problem of like, I don't care about this movie, skip it. I don't know, I hope this helps kind of like clue you in and how I think about the Marvel movies. So that's my thought process on superheroes, and I hope you enjoyed this video.